Alright, so I have done a little bit of work on the other side of the track here to kind of get the rails up and running on the other side. So if you're leaving in the opposite direction, I haven't wired anything up inside. I just wanted to show you the rail configuration because it gets a little tricky when you want to try to customize this design. If you want to have rails go off in the opposite direction like I have here, or if you end up wanting to have the entire station flipped 90 degrees and have the wiring run along another axis. So I'm going to F3 mode here. On my Mac it's function F3. Um, if you go into that mode, you can actually see right now the line of wiring that we have is along a west and east path. That's the direction the wiring travels. But if I flipped the entire station 90 degrees, then my wiring would be going south and north, like that. So no matter which direction you're in, you just need to be aware of it because it's going to require you to customize the configuration of your tracks just a little bit and the layout. So you'll see right here, and I'm going to explain a little bit more over here in just a moment with how you need to wire the torches at the end, because you basically need to invert the signal on some of them depending on the direction you're in. So I'll get to that in a moment. But just for the track configuration first, this very first one that we wired up, the track comes out here and it goes along the building and then it turns to the left like this in this configuration, then loops around and it comes back in this direction. Now in this case my curved tracks have to actually be curved in this direction by default, so that the minecart will pass over each of those intersections and continue on excuse me, until we get to the very end, and it actually turns on that one because that's the one that's currently selected for it to turn left and leave the outgoing track. And if you switch any one of the buttons, like let's say if I switch the middle button right here for example, go ahead and click on that. Now it has made the first two still in that default position where it passes over it, as well as this one over here too. That doesn't really matter because we hit the third one and we're going to turn to the left, just like that. That's how you want your track to work when it's oriented like so. Now if you're looking at something in this configuration where you leave the track like this, instead of turning to the left like you did on the other one, you're actually turning to the right. So you curve around, go like this, and then you loop around, and now the curved tracks need to be like this by default. They need to be in this position. So again, over here, they are like that. And if you're in a configuration like this, they need to be curved like this. Because, of course, you need to be able to pass over each one of these until you reach the one that you want to leave. And the one that you want to leave on will then curve and take you outward on your destination. And the same thing would apply, and this is the east-west wiring configuration, but the same thing would apply if your wiring goes from the north or to the south. You just need to know which direction your tracks are coming out from your station and which direction it curves when you leave, and then when you turn it back around you need to be able to see which direction your tracks need to be by default. Now this is where things get a little bit tricky, and that's why I'm going to head over here to explain some of the wiring, because no matter which direction you're in, if you're facing east, west, north, or south, the configuration for your tracks is going to be a little bit different in terms of the redstone torches underneath those curved rails. Some of them, they need to be powered on to remain in the default position that it will allow to pass over. Some of them, the redstone torch would need to be powered off depending on the direction you're facing in order for that redstone torch to be in that default position that will allow everything to pass over it. So you will need to possibly adjust the wiring a little bit at the end of each one of your wiring systems. So all of this up to here would still stay the same, all the way up to where you have your redstone torches coming out from the wiring scheme right here. On the individual lines of wiring, you may need to actually invert the signal. And I will show you some examples of this in a moment on some of the different servers that I've created this design on. But basically, if this were such a case where I would need it to be inverted, I would want the end result to be that all of the tracks are powered off except for one of them. All of the torches would be powered off except for one of them, which would be powered on, and that would be my destination track. So depending on the angle, the direction that you're facing, it may actually require you to have it powered on. So let's look at each one of these directions just so you can see a little bit more what I'm talking about. So right here I just set up a little simple wiring system to mimic the type of wiring that we have going on over here, but it's just not as complex. I just threw it together in a second. I've got a signal coming out from here, which is similar to how the button creates a signal. It goes into this block with a redstone torch on the other side, and when that redstone torch is powered on, then it powers this line of wiring and powers that redstone torch to be off. And if I were to flip the switch, then it would power that, which actually makes this redstone torch turn off. It inverts that signal, powering that redstone off and making this redstone torch be on. Now when I go over here where I'm facing west, you can actually see the track switch as I do, just like that. So if you're facing west and you need your tracks to be curved like this, then this is the type of wiring that you want. You want your torch to be lit at the end of it, but if you want your track to be facing like this by default and you're facing west, you want your torch to be turned off. And similarly, if we go over here, when you're facing east, if you need your torch to be off at the end by default, then your wiring is going to be, if you need your rail to be curved like this by default, then your wiring will be such that the torch will be off. If your rail needs to be like that by default, then your wiring needs to be such that your torch will be on. And then moving over here, if we have a line of wiring that's facing north, if your rails happen to need to be curved like this by default, then you need to make sure that your torch is off. And if your rails need to be curved like this by default, you need to make sure that your torch is on. And then over here, facing south, if your rail needs to be curved like this, you need to make sure your torch is on. And if your rail needs to be curved like this, you need to make sure your torch is off. So I know that's like really confusing, but just take a look at which direction you are building your station in, and which direction your track is, and which direction your wiring is, and look at which configuration of your rails you need to have set up, and then look at which position they need to be in by default, which position you want them to be in so that every cart will pass over it until you select a certain track. And look at that position from this direction and know, okay, I'm facing west and I need it to be like this by default. So you can go back and rewind that part of the video and say, okay, so I'm facing east, and I need it to face that direction. So just like this, that means I need to make sure that my torch is on underneath, and that will put it on default. I need the signal to actually make sure that when it reaches the end and turns the torch off, that's the track I want to be selected in that scenario. That's just an example. And if you're facing west, which again, that's the one that I showed you guys first of all, if you need your torch by default to be like that, which we do, so that it will pass over when we're leaving that direction, then you want to make sure that your torch is on for all of the tracks except for the one that you want selected, and the one that you want to be selected, you want to be the one that's turned off. And that's exactly what we have happening right over here. The torch that's off is the track that's selected. Now let me actually show you two examples of this. I'll show you just a full example in one of the servers that I built, where it's wired exactly like this on an east-west axis. And then I'm going to show you another example which is a little bit different, where I had to actually invert the signals. That's on a north-south axis. So let me go ahead and show you guys both of those now so you can get a little bit more idea of what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm here on the Mountville server in the Nether, and this is our Nether Hub that we have set up here with the wiring that I set up in an east-west direction. Let me go ahead and go into F3 mode again. So this is exactly the same as the one that I just showed you guys in that creative world, where facing west for that line of wiring and facing east for this line of wiring. And this is basically what it looks like. We've got all of our destinations over here. Those two don't have any tracks going to it, so they're just kind of dummy destinations. And basically, let me go up and fly here. I've got my tracks laid out like this. Now the reason I have glass here, this is a tip if you plan to build a station like this in the Nether. I do it in the Nether because of the 8-to-1 transportation ratio. For every 1 block I go in the Nether, it's like going 8 blocks in the overworld, so it's super useful and a lot faster way to travel. But so basically I put the glass here because it allows, it prevents zombie pigmen from spawning because it's actually at a 2 height. So the only place it could spawn would be like right here technically. And it also prevents gas from spawning because the glass is a block that will prevent a gas from spawning above it. So it doesn't necessarily look the prettiest, and I actually tried a different approach in the next station that we built, but it is functional and it does its job, and you are also able to pass through glass when you're in a minecart if it's at that 2 height level, so and you don't suffocate. So it takes advantage of a couple things like that to keep hostile mobs from spawning and shooting fireballs and blowing up your track, or having pigmen be stuck on the track and then knock you out of your car, and yeah, it's just not a good time. So this is a lot easier. So this is how I have the wiring. It's set up exactly like before. You can see kind of some of the destinations that it goes to, and on the other side over here, the tracks are wired like are arranged like so, and the wiring is exactly the same as we showed on the video so far. Let me just go ahead and break through down into here so you can take a look at that wiring, what it looks like. Exactly the same. Again, I used stone here, but again, you can use any type of block that you want. Everything here is exactly the same, and I actually utilized the trick with putting the redstone torches underneath, and I made it just half slabs here just because I liked the look of it. But one thing that you need to be aware of, if you're using this redstone trick to actually power a rail that's coming up like this, and if you can see that powered rail right there is being powered by this redstone torch, you want to make sure that it has a full block underneath it, because if you were to put the redstone torch right here, for example, and there was just a half slab above it, it would not reach through and power the rail on the other side. You have to have a solid block for the redstone signal to pass through, so just be aware of that. But yeah, basically everything is exactly like on the other track. I have my wiring such that all the tracks by default are powered on by a redstone track, or by a redstone torch, except for the redstone torch that's powered off. That's the track that's currently selected. And the same thing over here when I go look on the direction facing east, exactly the same setup. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me go ahead and show you the other one, this is the Mountville server. The other one is in the Megadamus server, and that one is a little bit more intricate. I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm here on the Megadamus server, and this is the Nether Hub that we have set up, and very similar to the other one, where you see we've got destinations here. I actually have 6 destinations in each side, so I expanded the wiring one more level, just added another line of wiring down here. And I've got another 6 over here, so we have a total of 12 in this section. And right now, actually, let me go ahead and go into creative so that I can show you guys the wiring. The reason that I have all these hanging things in here, all these like lights and fire and everything hanging down, is to prevent gas from spawning. So I didn't do the glass. I think this looks a little bit nicer than the glass. And then I have half slabs here, which prevents the zombie pigmen from spawning. So it kind of the best of both worlds, because gas needs such a big box in order to spawn in, and zombie pigmen will only spawn basically like on the top here or on top of the tracks. They can spawn, but that's about it. So this is how I have the wiring or the track kind of configured for this one. And again, right here I am on a south and north axis for my wiring. So a little bit different than the other ones that I've had. And in this configuration, you come out and you turn like this, and you want your tracks to be like this, except for this one is the one that is actually the destination track. But all the default positions for these tracks, it's got to be like that. And I'll show you guys underneath the wiring and how that needs to be inverted and everything with that. On the other side, this is what the wiring looks like, the configuration for the tracks, that is, and kind of how everything needs to be set up. So these are the default positions, then this one is the one that's going to be the one that's selected. So let me go ahead and hop out of creative here, and I'm going to hop downstairs and show you guys the wiring. So let's head through here, out this little side door, and we'll hop down into the wiring room. Hello, pigmen. Excuse me. You're in my way. There we go. Alright, so this is the wiring, and again, I am on the north and south sides, so let's go ahead and look at the north configuration. And you'll see here that all of the lines of wiring, it ends up with the redstone torch being turned off. That puts the default position for the tracks for every one of these except for this one, which is the one that's powered on. And if we were to hop over to the other side here, and the one that faces towards the south, the end result of the track has, again, every one of the torches off for the default position to occur on each one of these curved rails, except for this one, which is the one that it's selected as the destination, has the redstone torch on, and it curves it in the direction that will send you out to your destination. Now, how I did this, because I had the wiring up to this point exactly the same. That final step of the initial chunk of wiring with the redstone torches on the end, that was all the same. After that is where I had to kind of switch it up a little bit, and I ended up needing to place a little configuration like this on every line of wiring. A block with the redstone on top of it, feeding into that block, and then powering this torch on the other side. That inverted the signal. So for every one of the lines of wiring that's turned off by default, as a result of these torches being turned off, then I have a redstone torch on the other side powered on, and then one block away from that I have the line of redstone going into this block right here with the redstone torch on top of it, and that inverts this. So now the end result of that is when the redstone torch in this section is off, on the other end of the wiring down here, the redstone torch that's underneath the curved rail will also be off. And now when the redstone torch over here is on, as this one is, the redstone torch at the end of this set of wiring follows through like that, and then that torch is powered on as well. So that's how you actually invert the wiring. Again, this takes a lot of troubleshooting, but I eventually was able to figure it out on here, and hopefully you can too, depending on which direction your tracks are facing. So that's about it. That is this example as well. Hopefully that was helpful to you guys. And let's actually go ahead and go back to take one last ride and call it a day. Alright, so we are back here at our original configuration or major contraption here with this multi-destination selector. I'm going to go ahead and actually ride this as a way to close out the video. So I hop in my cart here, I've got my line of powered rails ready to be powered, and let's say destination number 4 seems good to me. I'm going to click on that, off we go. Turn around like this, loop back around, pass over each one of those, and boom. We left on that 4th destination, just like that. Now, if we were to come in from any one of these, like let's say we came in from this destination right here, and we're coming in, we turn, place it over, and we head right back into the station. And then we can hop off, hop on this track, and go from here, or whatever it is that we want to do. So that is the multi-track switcher station, multi-destination station. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Again, many thanks to Kamiar, who was the one who actually came up with the video that I originally watched, which inspired me to kind of modify his design just slightly and put it on both sides and expand it as well, and just kind of give you guys some good troubleshooting tips as well, because I found that I was having a lot of problems troubleshooting it when I had my station oriented in different directions. So hopefully the information that I gave you is enough to help you out no matter what configuration your station is set up in. Please leave me comments and feedback. Let me know if there's anything that wasn't clear, if you have any more questions, or just if you want to just show me a link to a video of how you utilize this in your world. Alright, well that's about it guys. Thanks again for checking out this video, and have a great day.